Have you ever wondered why video samples audio at 44,000 samples per second, yet CDs sample audio at 44.1? Of course you have. But why? Well, it dates back to the 1960s and classical music. In the 1960s, when Sony was developing the spec for CDs, the dominant form of musical entertainment was the album. It was a record about 12 inches in diameter. It was made out of plastic, and it had a groove that went from the outside of the record to the inside, turned at 33 RPMs. In fact, a little-known secret is that records have grooves that go from, actually a single groove per side goes from the outside to the inside. CDs have grooves that go from the inside to the outside, just in case you want to surprise people at parties. Anyway, Sony was trying to figure out how they were going to be able to get people to adopt this new format called CDs. And the dominant form of music in those days was classical, not pop or rock. That was counterculture. Nobody talked about that in polite society. Classical music was the driving business force in the record industry. So Sony went to the classical publisher and said, we've got this great new idea of a musical format. What does it take to have you convert all of your libraries from vinyl LPs to CDs? And the classical people said, well, an album holds 30 minutes of music to a side, and there's two sides. So the CD needs to hold 60 minutes of musical material, and it needs to be stereo. So that was the requirement. It needed to hold 60 minutes of material, and it needed to be stereo. Well, in those days, CDs could only hold 600 megabytes of data. Since then, they grow to 700, but 600 was the limit back in the 60s and 70s. So the math became easy. How many samples per second do we need to be able to have a file that's an hour long and is yet not larger than 600 megabytes? Well, complicating this equation is the fact that human hearing goes from 20 cycles per second, which is really, really deep bass, to 20,000 samples per second, which is really, really high treble, 20 to 20K, we call it. Sample rate determines frequency response. The more samples per second, the higher frequency response you get. So we needed to have a sample rate which would give us the entire range of human hearing, 20 to 20K, yet not exceed the file size of 600 megabytes. Well, this is a perfect problem for engineers. They whipped out their slide rules. That's the calculator before calculators were invented. Whipped out their slide rules and did calculating and realized that the magic compression number that would give us a stereo pair, 600 megabytes or smaller, and exceed the range of human hearing was 44,100 samples per second. Yet, when video came along and video became digital, well, we discovered that the magic number for getting the best compression and the smallest file size was not 44.1, but 48. 48,000 samples per second still yields frequency response greater than human hearing, and at the same time compresses to smaller files. So video took the new technology of 48K, and audio is working with the older technology of 44.1. Both of them have frequency responses that exceed human hearing. And now you know why they both exist.